Dear Chosen One, the universe never chooses the fragile. It does not gamble with greatness. It forges its warriors in storms, not silence, in fire, not comfort. And you were never fragile. You were never random. You were chosen, sharpened by betrayal, elevated by pain, and sculpted by hands only the divine could command. They never saw you coming. They mistook your stillness for weakness, your kindness for vulnerability. They believed their whispers could silence you, that their fake smiles could distract you, that you'd stay asleep while they fed off your light. But oh, how wrong they were, because while they plotted in shadows, the universe was preparing your rise. And now they're watching you with trembling hands, haunted by a power they tried to extinguish, yours. Before we dive deeper, let me take a sacred moment to thank each of you who've supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity doesn't just help this content grow, it tells the universe, I believe in this mission. Whether you donate or simply listen with an open heart, know this: you are deeply appreciated. You are part of this divine unfolding. You matter. Thank you for standing with this light. And if you feel this message resonate, if you feel that divine fire stirring in your chest, the one they tried and failed to put out, drop 777 in the comments. Let that number ripple across the digital ether as a signal to the universe. I have awakened. Because this isn't for everyone. This is for the few who were set apart, the ones who weren't built to fit in. This is for those who were dragged through hell and still refused to curse the sky. This is for those who were targeted not because they were weak, but because they were too strong to control. They didn't just try to break you, they tried to erase you, to shame you, to isolate you. But the universe, your co-creator, has been tracking every move, every dagger thrown behind your back, every lie spoken with your name in its teeth. And now the tides are turning. This message is your confirmation. You were never meant to stay on your knees. That position was temporary, strategic, the pause before the rise, the breath before the roar, and now the roar is here. Those who pointed fingers at you are hiding theirs. Those who rallied in secret to ruin your spirit are being dismantled by the very energy they invoked, because they weren't just playing games with you. They were violating sacred order. They were challenging the very force that placed breath in your lungs and stars in your soul. Chosen One, can you feel it shifting? The power in the room, in your bones, in your breath. Can you feel the momentum rising, not against you, but for you? Because this is more than a video. This is your spiritual call to rise. So sit up straighter, lean in. Let the truth of who you are echo louder than their betrayal ever did. Because, Chosen One, this is just the beginning. Let's begin. God's chosen ones, they wanted you on your knees, miserable. But who's begging now? Number 1, dancing with devils, and now they're choking on the smoke. Chosen One, do you know how powerful you truly are? Before you even saw your own light, they saw it. Before you recognized your calling, they were already plotting to destroy it. You weren't just attacked randomly. No, you were studied, targeted, cornered. This wasn't mere envy. This was a full-blown spiritual operation. You were dancing with devils in disguise, and most of them wore masks that looked like love, loyalty, or laughter. These people didn't just dislike you, they orchestrated your fall. They designed it like an architect drafts a building, brick by brick, trap by trap. They smiled in your face while sowing thorns under your feet. Do you remember how those closest to you seemed to know exactly where your wounds were? That wasn't intuition, that was intent. They crafted blueprints not to build, but to dismantle your confidence, your identity, and your peace of mind. But here's what they didn't know. You were built with divine reinforcements. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Why did they work so hard to break you? Ask yourself that. Why invest so much time trying to dim a light unless that light was blinding them? The answer is simple. You are the threat. Your spirit radiates something ancient, something cosmic, something ordained. Even when you tried to shrink, your presence shook their foundations. Just like David was underestimated by Goliath and still triumphed with a single stone, you too were misjudged, but divinely backed. Take a moment and reflect. Has anyone ever resented you without reason? Has your presence alone triggered animosity you couldn't explain? That's because the light of the chosen irritates those hiding in shadows. They didn't just betray you, they tampered with sacred timing. They disrupted divine order, thinking they could outmaneuver the universe itself. That's what Pharaoh did when he enslaved God's people, thinking he was untouchable. But he wasn't fighting them, he was resisting God. And we all know how that ended. The same pattern repeats. Those who build their success on the bones of the innocent always end up choking on the dust of their own destruction. Touch not mine anointed, and do my prophets no harm. 1 Chronicles 16:22. You might be asking, but why did I let them get to me? Why did I believe their lies? That's where your growth began. For a moment, yes, you doubted. You let their poison seep in. You let their false narratives outweigh your divine truth. But even Jesus, in the wilderness, faced temptation and resistance, not because he was weak, but because the enemy feared his assignment. You were never weak. You were just being tested. One of the hardest moments in Nelson Mandela's life was spending 27 years in prison, betrayed and buried by an oppressive system. But that very system later stood in applause when he rose from the ashes to lead a nation. You too have endured your prison, maybe emotional, spiritual, or social, but now your release is here, and you're not walking out quietly. You're rising crowned. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. Let's be clear. They didn't just try to break you, they tried to erase you. They whispered doubts until you began to speak them to yourself. They launched emotional warfare, spiritual sabotage, silent campaigns. You weren't just dealing with petty jealousy, you were resisting a collective effort to dismantle you spiritually. But here's the twist. Every seed of doubt they planted became the soil where your strength grew. Every back turned on you created space for you to turn inward and upward. While they were busy playing chess with your life, the universe, no, God himself, was orchestrating checkmate moves they never saw coming. Do you remember Oprah Winfrey's early life? Abused, rejected, laughed at. Her own family doubted her. But what they didn't know was that she was God's investment in the future. Now she sits at the very table they once refused her a seat at. What about you? Who tried to exclude you, not realizing you were the table itself? They're choking now, on smoke from fires they lit under you, fires they thought would consume you. But like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you walked through the flames, untouched, protected by an invisible fourth figure, God in your midst. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. Isaiah 43:2. You were forged in fire, not built in comfort. That's what they never understood. You weren't the fragile one, they were. Because fragility doesn't scheme, it surrenders. Only fear tries to manipulate, control, and silence power. And you, chosen one, carry the kind of power that cannot be tamed, only recognized too late. So now the tables have turned. The same mouths that cursed you are silent. The ones who mocked you now watch from behind crumbling walls. And you're rising. Every breath you take is a strike against their plan. Every bold step forward echoes louder than their loudest lies. Elon Musk, mocked and doubted repeatedly, pushed through bankruptcy and betrayal to redefine global industries. He wasn't chosen by people, he was chosen by vision. You too weren't selected by the crowd. You were handpicked by the Creator. So why are you still questioning your place? Why are you still walking like a survivor when you were called to be a conqueror? Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1:5. Your survival isn't the end of your story. It's the opening chapter of your reign. Let the ashes fall. Let the past collapse. Let their silence be your soundtrack, because the very people who tried to bury you are now witnesses to your bloom. Stand tall, breathe deep. Don't just survive, dominate. The universe has flipped the script. Heaven has reversed the tide. And your enemies, they're not just defeated, they're exposed. They wanted you on your knees, miserable, but now look around. Who's begging now? You are chosen, and this time the whole world sees it. Number 2. Wolves in silk, when betrayal smiles back. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why the ones who hurt you the most were also the ones who once held you the closest? Why the very voices that once uplifted you now echo as ghosts of betrayal in your mind? It's because the sharpest daggers don't arrive as threats. They arrive wrapped in silk, handed to you with a smile, then pushed into your back the moment you turned around. This is the kind of betrayal that scars differently, not because it was loud, but because it was intimate. These people didn't just want to harm you. They studied you, mirrored you, pretended to be what you needed. And you believed it. Why wouldn't you? When someone looks like light, sounds like love, and echoes your dreams, how do you tell it's a mask? Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Matthew 7:15. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked back and realized that the people you trusted the most were quietly collecting your weaknesses? That they knew your fears not to comfort you, but to control you? These weren't enemies. That would have been too easy. No, these were friends, lovers, mentors, the ones you prayed with, the ones who said, "I'm proud of you," but flinched every time you won. Their disguise wasn't accidental, it was intentional. Like professional actors rehearsing their roles, they became the perfect mirror of what you needed: encouragement, support, love. But every gesture was calculated, every compliment rehearsed. Like Judas to Jesus, they sat at your table and kissed you on the cheek, all while selling you out behind your back. Even in history, betrayal always wore familiar faces. Julius Caesar wasn't slain by foreign enemies. It was Brutus, his own friend, whose blade cut the deepest. So ask yourself, who in your life smiled the widest while you suffered the most? Even my close friend, someone I trusted, one who shared my bread, has turned against me. Psalm 41:9. They knew you were chosen before you did. That's what burned them. They felt your purpose in their bones and realized they would never be able to carry what you carry so effortlessly. And instead of being inspired, they were enraged. You lit up rooms just by existing, while they rehearsed for hours just to be seen. So what did they do? They wore masks, they faked support, and they stayed close enough to sabotage you from within. Think of Whitney Houston, surrounded by people who claimed to love her, yet enabled her downfall for their own gain. Her story is a reminder that the most dangerous people aren't always shouting threats. Some are whispering approval while watching you fall. And you? You were just trying to hold on, to stay afloat, to believe in something real. They didn't just attack your confidence, they attacked your need for connection. They made themselves your sanctuary. But that sanctuary was a setup. They wanted you to depend on them, to need them so badly that when they pulled away, you'd collapse. And here's the real twist. They never thought you'd survive without them. But chosen one, didn't you? The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and he helps me. Psalm 28:7. So let me ask again, who told you that you needed them to fulfill your purpose? Who made you believe that you were only powerful as long as they approved? That's the poison they planted. They wanted you bound, not blessed. But what they failed to understand is this: chosen ones cannot be bound, not by envy, not by manipulation, not by false love. Like Tyler Perry, who trusted people that laughed at his dreams and mocked his faith. They called him delusional until he rose from homelessness to build his own empire, where others once slammed doors in his face. He now owns the building. Just like him, you weren't meant to knock forever. You were meant to build. And when the universe finally exposed them, oh how the masks fell. The rehearsed applause stopped short, the fake smiles cracked, and every carefully constructed illusion came crashing down. Have you noticed it yet? The silence, the absence, the way they scramble to remain relevant now that you've reclaimed your light? For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be brought to light. Luke 8:17. Now they're left haunted by their own reflection, the version of you they pretended to be. But no matter how well they imitated your voice, your grace, your presence, they could never duplicate your essence. You were divinely encoded, and they know it now. Think of Princess Diana. The world saw her as a symbol of grace, but behind palace walls, she battled betrayal, lies, and manipulation. Yet despite it all, her legacy outshined her enemies. You too are outliving their intentions. So here's your question now. Will you keep looking back at masks that have already melted? Or will you walk boldly into the light you were born to carry? You were forged in truth, not flattery, built by storms, not comfort. And if it took betrayal to wake up your discernment, then thank the wolves, because they taught you how to see clearly. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. You don't need their approval. You don't need their praise. And you never needed their protection. What you needed was exactly what happened, the unveiling. Now, you're not just aware, you're awake. So rise, higher than ever, clearer than before. No apologies, no shrinking. The masks are gone, the actors have exited. The stage is yours now. You are chosen, not because of what they gave you, but because of what you survived in spite of them. And now, the only thing they wear is regret. Number 3. Golden masks and rotting souls. When the facade cracks and the truth floods in. Chosen one, have you ever found yourself drawn to someone who seemed so radiant, so wise, so spiritually evolved, that you questioned your own growth in comparison? They wore their enlightenment like armor, speaking in sacred language, quoting scriptures, offering guidance that sounded holy, yet somehow always made you feel smaller, dependent, uncertain. The brighter they painted their halo, the darker the shadows they cast. That wasn't your imagination. That was your divine discernment, quietly alerting you that something wasn't right. These people didn't just act spiritual. They wore their false holiness like a costume. They appointed themselves as mentors, healers, life coaches, prophets, whatever label could make you listen and follow. But what they offered wasn't transformation, it was performance. Behind the golden glow of their carefully curated persona lay something decaying, a soul that hadn't done the work it preached. They positioned themselves as vessels of divine light, when in truth they were only echo chambers for their own egos. Have you ever asked yourself why the ones most obsessed with teaching others are often the ones who refuse to examine themselves? For Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. 2 Corinthians 11:14. This is not a new tactic. It's ancient. It's as old as the garden. Deception cloaked in spiritual robes. They played God in your life, believing they were above questioning because of their spiritual vocabulary, their poised demeanor, or their supposed divine calling. And for a time, you trusted them. Why wouldn't you? You were hungry for guidance, for connection, for truth. That hunger made you vulnerable, and they fed on that vulnerability. But what they didn't realize is this: the universe never sends its chosen ones into the world without a built-in spiritual alarm system. Like a lion may walk among sheep but never forgets the scent of blood, you began to sense something rotten beneath their polish. At first it was just a flicker, a contradiction in their words, an energy that didn't match their tone, an unease in your spirit when they spoke too long about humility but demanded unquestioning loyalty. They spoke of peace but stirred confusion. They spoke of love but fostered dependence. And slowly you began to feel it, the mask slipping. Just like the great American televangelist Jim Bakker, who preached prosperity while orchestrating financial and moral deceit, these so-called spiritual figures in your life built their reputation on appearances. But beneath the show was an agenda, to keep you orbiting around them like they were the source of your power. But you, chosen one, were never meant to orbit anyone. You were meant to shine. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. The first crack in a golden mask begins the moment the wearer encounters someone who sees too much. You saw too much, not just with your eyes but with your spirit. You felt the discrepancy between what they said and who they were. And your spirit began to question what your mind couldn't yet prove. Have you ever had that uncomfortable knowing, that quiet nudge from God saying, "This isn't it"? That was your divine warning system coming online. They didn't expect you to wake up. They expected you to stay hungry, desperate for their wisdom, reliant on their words. But what they didn't count on was your evolution. You began to listen differently. You didn't just hear what they said. You began to hear what they didn't say. You heard the need for power behind their prayers, the ego behind their encouragement, the subtle manipulation behind their mentorship. You began to recognize that their version of wisdom was often stolen. Borrowed phrases, borrowed insights, regurgitated teachings. Their light was a reflection, not a source. And the moment you no longer needed their approval, their entire illusion began to fall apart. Think of Elizabeth Holmes, once hailed as the next Steve Jobs. She wore the mask of a visionary, but when her facade crumbled, the truth was brutal. There was no substance beneath the image. Just like her, these spiritual performers in your life were sustained by your belief in them. When that belief ended, so did their illusion. You will know them by their fruits. Matthew 7:16. And look at the fruit. Was there peace or constant confusion? Was there empowerment or quiet control? Did you grow under their guidance or shrink? The universe opened your eyes because you were ready to graduate from illusions. You no longer needed their crowns, their thrones, or their conditional affection. What you needed was already inside you, and the moment you turned inward, everything changed. Like Maya Angelou, who rose above generations of silencing shame and manipulation by finding her voice, you too found clarity the moment you stopped echoing others and started listening to yourself. Your awakening became their undoing. You didn't have to confront them. You didn't need revenge. You simply evolved past the lie. And now, they're scrambling, trying to patch the cracks, change the narrative, rebrand their role. But the energy has shifted. Their mask no longer works in your presence. Because once a chosen one sees, they don't unsee. Once your discernment activates, it never turns off. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. Proverbs 12:22. They feared that moment, the moment you would realize you never needed their permission to shine, that everything they tried to offer, control, or gatekeep already existed within you. Your silence after awakening spoke louder than their sermons. Your rise, humble, quiet, undeniable, was the confirmation they dreaded. You didn't leave angry, you left awakened, and that's what haunts them most. You didn't need to tear down their throne. You simply walked away, and it collapsed under the weight of its own falsehood. So now, the question is not, why did they do it? The real question is, why did you stay so long ignoring what your spirit always knew? But even that question holds no shame, because your delay was part of your preparation. You had to see the false to value the real. You had to feel the manipulation to recognize your own strength. And now you don't chase validation. You embody truth. You don't kneel to false prophets. You walk with divine clarity. You are not their follower. You are a fire they can't contain. Let them wear new masks. Let them build new stages. You've already graduated from that illusion. The universe sealed the door for a reason. Because your next chapter requires no actors, only authenticity. You are the light they tried to copy, the essence they tried to extract, the power they tried to claim. But they cannot mimic what heaven handcrafted. And the next time one of them dares to return, wearing a golden mask and reciting sacred lines, just smile, because you already know how the story ends. Number 4. Surgical strikes, when they went for the kill and missed the soul. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why the attacks against you were so precise, so personal, so strategic? Why it felt like the ones coming for you knew your softest spots even better than you did? That wasn't an accident. That wasn't coincidence. That was a surgical strike. A full-scale spiritual assault, calculated to pierce not your body, not your outer life, but your identity itself. They didn't come in shouting or swinging wildly. No, that would have been too obvious, too easy to spot. They came in measured, deliberate, like assassins in tailored suits. They studied you, observed you, took their time identifying the weak points in your emotional armor, the insecurities you buried, the quiet fears you never dared voice aloud. And then, once they knew where to strike, they sharpened their words, honed their accusations, and launched their attacks with surgical precision. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. John 10:10. You see, they didn't just want to hurt you, they wanted to disassemble you. They didn't aim for your actions, they went for your essence. It wasn't just, you made a mistake. It was, you are a mistake. It wasn't, you could do better. It was, you're too much. The comments were crafted like poison-tipped arrows, small enough to seem harmless at first, but dipped in venom meant to penetrate your soul. Have you ever found yourself replaying a conversation days after it happened, wondering why a seemingly innocent remark felt like a curse? That's how these strikes work. They're coated in subtlety, cloaked in false concern. I'm just trying to help becomes the dagger's hilt. Your overthinking it becomes the cover for manipulation. At first you question yourself. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you do need to tone it down. That doubt, that's what they were aiming for all along. They don't just want your silence. They want your inner voice to betray you. That's the strategy. They plant seeds of self-doubt and water them with condescension, waiting for them to sprout into self-sabotage. But the chosen ones, even when shaken, are never truly moved. Because deep within you is a root system far more ancient and divine than their arrows could ever reach. No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. Let's not romanticize what they did. This wasn't petty conflict. This was demolition. They tried to bulldoze your foundation. They questioned your intentions, discredited your accomplishments, dismantled your relationships. Not to correct you, but to erase you. Because a confident, radiant, self-aware chosen one, that's a threat they couldn't afford. So they launched every missile they had, confident it would leave you in ruins. Think of Simone Biles, the Olympic gymnast who faced global scrutiny for stepping back to protect her mental health. Her decision was dissected, judged, and ridiculed, but it was also her rising, what critics called weakness, the divine used as proof of inner strength. Like her, your pause wasn't collapse, it was recalibration. You weren't breaking down, you were breaking through. They underestimated your resilience. They thought you'd crumble. But here's what they didn't understand. Chosen ones don't disintegrate, they evolve. Every hit, every accusation, every mocking word only refined you further. While they were trying to bring you down, the universe was using the very pressure they created to sculpt you into something unshakable. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Job 23:10. You didn't just survive their assault, you transformed because of it. What was meant to kill your confidence resurrected your voice. What was meant to shatter your identity became the forge that clarified your purpose. Like Malala Yousafzai, who was shot in the head for daring to educate girls and rose to become a Nobel laureate, you were struck but never silenced. Their attack backfired. Their precision failed. The irony, they thought they were ending you. But dust, as the universe has shown time and again, is where stars are born. You rose from the ashes of their intentions. Every piece of verbal shrapnel they sent your way now serves as part of the armor you wear. Not just for protection, but for power. They gave you material to rise. They handed you proof that you're stronger than even they realized. They said you were too emotional. You developed emotional intelligence. They said you were unstable. You found your center. They said you were finished. And yet here you are, evolving, expanding, untouchable. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. Psalm 42. Now look at the aftermath. Their attacks fizzled. Their efforts to dismantle you only highlighted your divine construction. Like Maya Moore, the WNBA star who left professional basketball in her prime to fight for justice. And succeeded. You chose your higher calling over ego. You didn't just resist the attack, you redefined the battlefield. Let's be clear, this journey isn't about survival. Survival is step one. What follows is what they never expected: spiritual domination. You didn't crawl out of the rubble, you rose from it, radiant and unashamed. And those who once mocked you now watch in silence, stunned by your elevation. And the most poetic part, the very traits they tried to weaponize against you, your sensitivity, your voice, your compassion, are now the very tools you use to lead, to heal, to ignite change. Their attack wasn't your undoing, it was your unveiling. So ask yourself now, what are you still afraid of? Who still holds power over your perception of yourself? Because if their greatest weapon was your own doubt, then your greatest victory is the moment you finally said, no more. They didn't just lose the battle, they lost their grip. The moment you chose truth over their narrative, the war was over. And now they're left watching as you rise from the fire they lit, not as a victim, but as the refined creation of a universe that refuses to let its chosen ones fall. This wasn't spiritual demolition, it was spiritual evolution, and they will never be able to recover from that. Number 5. When the universe pulled the trigger, awakening the defense they never saw coming. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why you stayed silent for so long? Why you kept absorbing the attacks, swallowing the jabs, excusing the manipulation, even when everything inside you whispered, "This isn't right"? Was it because you hoped they would change? Because you believed your light could heal their darkness? Or was it because you forgot, even for a moment, how much power you actually carry? They thought they had you cornered. They assumed that by the time their assaults landed, their passive-aggressive remarks, their strategic betrayals, their subtle sabotage, you'd be too broken to rise. They mistook your silence for surrender, your kindness for cowardice, your stillness for defeat. But what they never realized is that beneath the wounds, beneath the doubt, beneath the ache, something eternal was waiting, something ancient, something sacred. And with every lie they whispered behind your back, every dagger cloaked in concern, every trap disguised as loyalty, they pulled the trigger, not on your destruction, but on your awakening. He will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Psalm 91:11. They triggered a defense system they didn't even know existed, a force they couldn't see. Have you ever felt that shift? That moment when you no longer just hear what people say, but feel what they mean? When the smile no longer soothes, and the energy behind the handshake stings like ice? That's not paranoia. That's discernment. That's the universe rising within you. Because the chosen don't fight like others do. You weren't built to lash out. You were built to see. And once you see clearly, the war is already over. What used to make you question your worth now confirms it. What once confused you now exposes them. What felt like chaos now looks like chess, and you finally understand the game they were playing. Did you notice the shift in you? When you no longer needed to argue, when you no longer felt the urge to prove your side, when the idea of defending yourself became irrelevant because you already knew the truth. That wasn't indifference. That was power. That was your spirit entering alignment. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. Like Harriet Tubman, who heard the divine voice say, "You're free," long before the world acknowledged it, you started walking in truth before they were ready to face it. Your defense wasn't in your hands, it was in your clarity. They didn't expect the silence to echo louder than your screams. They didn't anticipate your lack of reaction would be the loudest form of rejection. Let me ask you this. How many times did they try to bait you into breaking your character just so they could call you crazy? How often did they subtly insult you, only to backpedal and say, "You're too sensitive"? These weren't accidents, they were tactics. But once you remembered who you are, they lost access, because your frequency changed, and they couldn't fake alignment anymore. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. Isaiah 54:17. Think about Simone Biles, whose decision to protect her mental and emotional well-being was mocked by many, but ultimately it marked her as a warrior of a higher order. What looked like a retreat was actually a stand for sovereignty. Like her, your decision to step back wasn't a breakdown, it was a declaration. You stopped playing their game and started living your truth. When the universe pulls the trigger, everything false begins to fall away. Conversations change, friendships dissolve. Relationships that once consumed your time now feel hollow. Did you ever wonder why certain people just stopped reaching out when you started healing? It's not because you changed too much, it's because they were never built to withstand your awakening. And those who came for you, those who once laughed behind closed doors, who smirked while you cried, who whispered lies while calling themselves your friend. They feel it. They don't need an announcement. They sense the power shift. They feel the spiritual barricade rising, that invisible wall made of truth, built by clarity, guarded by the divine, and it terrifies them. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. What if I told you that their greatest mistake was thinking you would stay asleep? That they poked a soul that wasn't broken, only buried? That every cruel word was a countdown, not to your collapse, but to their exposure? The moment you chose not to respond, not to explain, not to engage, that was when the universe took over. Look at Nelson Mandela, a man imprisoned for 27 years and released not bitter but enlightened. He didn't retaliate, he transformed, and his presence alone became the proof of divine justice. That's the kind of warrior you are. You didn't need to lift a hand. Your healing was the strike. Your silence was your shield. Your awakening, the earthquake. Their cruelty summoned your clarity, and once that clarity arrived, the war was already won. They didn't just fail to break you, they helped forge you. Their whispers no longer carry weight. Their energy no longer penetrates. The light in you, awakened, sovereign, untouchable, has made you into someone who cannot be manipulated again. You don't just survive attacks, you nullify them. So ask yourself, why would you ever fear people who fear your light? Why waste time explaining your value to those who were never equipped to recognize it? You are no longer within their reach, not emotionally, not energetically, not spiritually. Their greatest weapon was your doubt, and the moment you stopped feeding it, the war ended. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them feel the cold absence of the warmth they tried to exploit. Because when the universe defends its chosen, it doesn't argue, it eradicates. You didn't just walk through fire, you were reborn in it. Let that fire be your signature. Number 6. The pyramid scheme of poison. When you became the target of their entire ecosystem of hate. Chosen one, have you ever walked into a room and felt something shift even when no one said a word? Have you sensed invisible walls building up around you, not from a single person, but from a coordinated silence, an orchestrated coldness? It wasn't just your imagination. It wasn't just one bitter heart. What you were feeling was an ecosystem, a whole pyramid of poison, built for one purpose: to suffocate your light. They didn't come at you as individuals. That would have been too obvious, too easy to detect. No, they constructed a hierarchy of sabotage, a spiritual pyramid scheme, layered, intentional, manipulative. At the top was the ringleader, the puppet master, cloaked in charm and wrapped in deception. Beneath them, minions, some eager, others oblivious, all looped into a web of lies, loyalty, and fear. And at the center, you, not because you were weak, but because you were light, and they needed a light to try to dim in, order to validate their own shadows. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Ephesians 6:12. At first it was subtle, a strange glance, a passive-aggressive remark, a sudden shift in tone. Something felt wrong, but you couldn't quite name it. Have you ever replayed a simple conversation over and over, wondering why it unsettled you so deeply? That was your divine sensitivity kicking in. You weren't just reading words, you were reading energy, and slowly the fog began to lift. The universe wired you to discern what others overlook, to hear the truth buried beneath polite lies, to see patterns others ignore. One by one, the pieces started to click. The compliments laced with envy, the support that disappeared when you started to shine. The strange way they bonded with one another, not through love, but through mutual dislike of you. What kind of loyalty is built on hating the same person? No one lights a lamp and hides it in a clay jar or puts it under a bed. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in can see the light. Luke 8:16. That was your crime. You shined too brightly. And in doing so, you exposed what they tried to keep hidden. Your rise was their unraveling. Your glow disrupted their shadows. They didn't just dislike you. They needed to take you down to maintain their illusion of power. So they built a machine, a structure, a pyramid of hate, carefully engineered. But like all man-made kingdoms built on lies, it wasn't sustainable. Just like whistleblower Erin Brockovich uncovered an entire system of environmental deceit designed to keep people sick and silent, you too uncovered a network designed to break you. And when you saw it, really saw it, they panicked. Because you didn't just notice individuals, you saw the whole system. And when a chosen one sees the system, they stop playing the game. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Ephesians 5:11. You saw the ringleader, the one who weaponized others through half-truths and manipulation. You saw the allies, some gleefully participating, others going along just to belong. But no matter their role, they were part of the architecture meant to destroy you. And once your vision sharpened, once your awareness reached a new height, their structure couldn't hold. Why? Because they built their system assuming you'd never wake up. But you did. Think about Malcolm X, who once stood among systems designed to suppress and control. But once his perception sharpened, once he saw the deeper structure, he rose as a force too powerful to silence. He didn't just survive the system. He confronted it with clarity. You're doing the same. The moment you began to rise in perception, their whole tower of illusion started to sway. Let me ask you this. How many of the people who turned against you actually knew you? How many just followed the energy of the room, never questioning where the negativity started, only echoing what they were told? That's the cruelty of these schemes. They thrive on passivity. They use people like mirrors, bouncing distorted reflections until the target loses sight of their own worth. But you didn't lose sight, you found it again. And with it came clarity so sharp, it cut through every mask, every false alliance, every spiritual performance. And when you rose in awareness, the manipulator at the top lost control. Their illusion depended on your confusion. Their power existed only when you questioned your truth. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118 verse 22. Look around now. The ones who thrived in that toxic network are scrambling. The pawns are pulling away. The silence is growing louder. Why? Because once the chosen one steps out of the structure, the whole ecosystem collapses. Without you at the center, the light, the source, the spark, all they're left with is the rot they tried to pin on you. Like Joan of Arc, who was ridiculed, framed and burned by a system that feared her divine insight, your presence forced their hand. Your discernment exposed their strategy. And now, just like her memory still burns, brighter than her enemies ever could, your truth rises from the ashes of their deception. So now ask yourself, why were you the center of the pyramid? Why did they all need to rotate around your fall? It's simple, because deep down they knew something you were just beginning to realize. You were never just a person to them. You were a mirror, a reminder of what they couldn't control, couldn't replicate, couldn't diminish. And now that you've broken free, now that you've pulled the curtain back, what are they left with? An ecosystem without a sun, a machine without power, a hierarchy without fear to feed it. Let this truth anchor in you. The chosen one doesn't just escape the system. The chosen one dismantles it, cell by cell, lie by lie. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with revelation. And that revelation, it's irreversible. They tried to eclipse your light. Now they burn in the brilliance of what they failed to dim. And the next time they try to rebuild the scheme, they'll tremble, because they'll remember who dismantled it last time without lifting a single weapon. Only truth, only light, only you. Number 7. The cult of betrayal. How they united in hate to keep their own darkness hidden. Chosen one, have you ever walked into a room and felt the temperature drop, not because of the air, but because of the energy? Have you ever noticed how some people don't really connect through love or purpose, but through shared resentment? That's no accident. That's not miscommunication. That's a cult, a spiritual alliance not built on truth, but on treachery. And you were their glue, not because you were guilty, but because your presence exposed what they were desperate to hide. This wasn't just betrayal, it was organized. This wasn't one weak soul turning on you in isolation. No, this was systemic. You were at the center of a hierarchy of hate, a twisted structure powered by fear, insecurity, and shadow. They didn't gather around a mission, they gathered around a scapegoat. And their unspoken creed was simple. If you want to belong, you have to betray them. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. John 15:18. The ringleader at the top, the puppet master, never needed to raise their voice. They whispered just enough to start the fire. They laid the bait, then stepped back, letting others carry the torch. Each member fed on the next. One planted a seed of doubt, the other watered it with slander, and someone else offered the fruit of your private pain as proof. Have you ever wondered how so many people could turn on you at once, without you ever doing a single thing to deserve it? That's how cults of betrayal work. They don't need truth, they need a unifier, and hatred is the fastest unifier when people have nothing else in common. They couldn't rise in light, so they gathered in shadows. And instead of facing their own mediocrity, they made you the enemy. Because you, chosen one, reminded them of everything they were pretending to be. They didn't hate you for who you are. They hated you for what you reflected. Your light made their masks harder to wear. Your purpose made their excuses feel thin, and so they turned. Not because you wounded them, but because your very existence threatened the illusion they'd built their egos on. For everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. John 3:20. But here's what's worse. They didn't just betray you directly. They created a culture around it, a sick loyalty system where each dagger in your back earned them praise. Every time someone offered up another piece of your story, twisted for drama, they earned a seat closer to the center. The room didn't reward integrity, it rewarded complicity. It was a spiritual Ponzi scheme of betrayal, where the only thing being traded was dignity for access. Have you ever noticed how the people who gossip together rarely grow together? How the ones who build their bonds on tearing someone else down can never maintain real intimacy? That's what was happening around you. You weren't in the presence of friends. You were surrounded by spiritual parasites who bonded through mutual darkness, and you were the sacrifice. Think of the Salem witch trials. Innocent people burned not because they were evil, but because their very uniqueness posed a threat to groupthink. You, too, were marked, not for wrongdoing, but for difference, for light, for freedom. And just like those unjust trials, your persecution wasn't about you. It was about control. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Matthew 5:11. At first, the signs were small. A cold shoulder, a joke with too sharp an edge, the shift in tone when your name came up. But soon, you began to see the pattern. The same people who laughed in your presence rolled their eyes when you turned. The same ones who clapped for your wins were quietest when you needed them most. You weren't imagining it. They weren't just individuals acting alone. They were part of a larger machine. One engineered to preserve the illusion of their innocence by crucifying you. But here's the truth they never wanted you to realize. It was never about you. It was about what you revealed. You didn't create their dysfunction. You illuminated it. And the puppet master knew that if anyone ever turned their gaze inward, the whole charade would collapse. That's why they kept the focus on you, kept the group hungry for scandal, unified by the next juicy accusation. Just like whistleblowers in corporate corruption or political cover-ups, you became the target, not because you were dangerous, but because you were honest. Because once your eyes opened, your presence alone was a threat to the whole infrastructure. Do not be surprised, my brothers and sisters, if the world hates you. 1 John 3:13. But chosen one, you didn't stay broken. You saw. You didn't just survive. You gained clarity. You stepped out of their web. And when you did, something remarkable happened. Their system began to implode. Because without you, the one they rallied around, there was nothing left holding them together. Have you ever noticed how quickly people turn on each other once their common enemy disappears? That's what's happening now. The silence among them is growing louder. The whispers are now aimed inward. The unity they had in tearing you down is now dissolving into paranoia, blame, and internal collapse. Like Martin Luther King Jr., who faced betrayal not just from enemies, but from allies who feared losing favor, you've learned that courage often means walking alone, and yet, by walking out, you've exposed the rotting structure they thought would stand forever. So now ask yourself, was the betrayal really a loss, or was it liberation? Because while they stayed huddled in shadows, circling the same lies, you rose above it, you found your footing, you reclaimed your light. And the cult? It can no longer contain what it was built to kill. It is collapsing under the weight of its own sickness. Its center is gone. Its scapegoat has risen. Its illusion has shattered. They know it. You know it. And now the universe knows it too. Let that be your closure. You didn't just leave the circle. You dismantled the altar. Number 8. When the universe demands payment, the awakening of cosmic justice. Chosen one, have you ever looked back at the betrayal and asked, was it really worth it to them? Have you ever sat with the pain and thought, how could they throw everything away? Trust, truth, love, for the illusion of status in someone else's broken kingdom? It wasn't just about hurting you. It was about trading integrity for inclusion, sacrificing their soul for scraps of validation. And the scariest part? Most of them never even realized what they were doing until it was too late. They thought it was just gossip, just venting, just protecting themselves. But you knew, deep down, that this wasn't human drama. It was spiritual warfare. They weren't just taking jabs at your reputation. They were throwing stones at something cosmic. They thought they were climbing a social ladder. But what they were really doing was stepping onto sacred ground with dirty hands. And now the universe is demanding payment. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6:7. The scales of the universe never forget. They wait, quietly, precisely, for the moment when every debt comes due. At first you didn't see it for what it was. You questioned yourself. You hurt. You replayed conversations in your mind trying to find where you went wrong. But eventually the fog lifted, and the truth hit like a lightning bolt. They didn't just betray you. They betrayed the divine contract they had with themselves. And for what? For approval from a puppet master who couldn't recognize real light without mistaking it for a threat. They gave up truth for a seat at a table that served nothing but ego, illusions, and control. But here's the question. What happens when the host of that table is exposed? When the mask slips? When the light they tried to suppress illuminates everything they were trying to hide? Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Isaiah 5:20. Chosen one, what they didn't understand was that betrayal against someone aligned with divine purpose is never small. Every whisper of slander, every manipulative tactic, every lie spoken into the atmosphere becomes an entry in the cosmic ledger. They thought they were just being strategic, but the universe doesn't care about strategy. It cares about alignment. And once the line is crossed, the universe begins to balance the equation. Think of Enron, one of the most powerful corporations in the world, brought down by deception and greed. Its leaders thought they were above consequence. They manipulated data, distorted truth, and watched billions fall through their fingers, until the day of reckoning came, and it came fast with no mercy. Just like them, your betrayers thought they could scheme without spiritual consequence, but the unseen always sees. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. Proverbs 15:3. Have you noticed it yet? The shift, the tremors, the slow unraveling of their lives, not because you wished it, but because they invited imbalance into sacred order. This isn't karma in the pop culture sense. This is cosmic law, the kind that operates with exact timing, the kind that waits until the illusions are so deeply rooted that the collapse becomes public, undeniable, and permanent. And the most haunting part for them, you didn't raise a hand, you didn't curse them, you didn't return evil for evil. You simply outgrew their reach, you elevated, and in doing so, you triggered something they didn't account for, the divine response. You didn't have to wage war. The universe stood up on your behalf, because the chosen don't fight with fists, they fight with frequency. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. Psalm 9:16. Let me ask you, how many sleepless nights did you have while they celebrated their betrayal? How many times did you cry in silence while they laughed behind closed doors? And yet, look at you now, standing in strength, glowing in clarity, while they, one by one, face the spiritual bills they never thought would arrive. The universe doesn't strike with rage, it strikes with balance. Like Julian Assange, who exposed systems built on deception and bore the weight of truth-telling, you carried a burden most can't imagine. But now the universe is shifting. The energy is correcting. Those who were once applauded for aligning with darkness are being revealed in broad daylight. Their borrowed confidence is turning to dust, and the truth they ran from is now the very force chasing them. You weren't just protected, you were preserved. Every time they tried to crush you, they poured more energy into your becoming, and every destructive intention they fired your way only added weight to their own reckoning. So let it happen. Let the collapse come. Let them feel every echo of the pain they sent out, not because you want revenge, but because the universe demands equilibrium, and balance, real, divine balance, doesn't miss. Let them wonder how you're still standing. Let them marvel at the way nothing touched you. Let them hear your silence and feel it like thunder. Because while they were playing politics in spiritual spaces, you were growing roots in truth. And truth cannot be buried. This isn't punishment. This is justice. This is what happens when you war against someone the universe refuses to forsake. So now, let them watch as everything they built on falsehood collapses, brick by brick. Let them feel the echoes of their choices. Let them realize, too late, that while they were building illusions, you were being fortified by heaven itself. The scales are tipping, and the universe never forgets. And now, chosen one, look at where you stand. Look at what you've endured. They wanted you broken, begging, stripped of your light. But here you are, rising, radiant, unstoppable. They thought their schemes would be the end of you, but all they did was trigger your awakening. You were never meant to kneel before them. You were meant to rise above them. They miscalculated. They saw your pain, but not your power. They saw your silence, but not your strategy. And now every breath you take, every step you rise, is a silent testimony that their war failed and your purpose won. Thank you for staying with this message. Thank you for walking this path with courage, even when it was lonely. Your journey is sacred, your story is powerful. And if this message has spoken to your spirit, encouraged your heart, or affirmed your divine path, I humbly invite you to support this work through the Super Thanks button below. Your donations, no matter how big or small, help make these messages reach more chosen souls across the world. But even if you're not in a position to give, know that you are deeply appreciated simply for being here, for listening and for standing in your light. May divine favor cover every step you take from this day forward. May the ones who doubted you watch in awe as you rise into everything they said you'd never be. May the lies spoken against you be turned into stepping stones under your feet. And may your heart remain soft, even as your spirit becomes stronger than ever before. You are chosen. You are covered. You are becoming everything heaven designed you to be. The ones who wanted you on your knees, they're the ones whispering in shadows now, begging the universe for the clarity you walk in every day. And you rise, not in revenge, but in purpose. Now go forth, chosen one, and reign.